everybody, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel, we're going to be talking about 1960s Peeping Tom and its brand new STUDIOCANAL 4K Blu-ray. So Peeping Tom was released in 1960, the very same year as Psycho. And that's very significant because both Psycho and Peeping Tom usually get brought up in the same conversation for being the two first slasher films. Peeping Tom over in the UK, and you had Psycho over here in America. But both films have become very historically significant, developed huge cult followings, but at the time in 1960, Peeping Tom was seen as a disaster. Pretty much ruined Michael Powell's career, who had a very successful career before that, actually directed one of my favorite films in The Red Shoes, which deals with very similar themes in this film, which is like obsession, commitment to your art. That's two very big themes in this film as well, while also dealing with mental illness, nature versus nurture. There are so many deep themes in this film. It's funny that in 1960 it got overlooked so much just because of the violence in this film. And if you were to watch this film now, you'd be like, there is no violence in this film because they always cut away at the very last second before we ever see anything serious. But the subject matter can be very dark. The main character, played by Carl Bowen, Mark, he actually is a serial killer, and we learn throughout the film why he is the way he is and why he's so desperate to tell somebody about himself. He's very self-aware of his mental issues, and it's all caused by his father. So before we get too far, Mark is a photographer slash cinematographer on a film crew. He has aspirations of becoming a director. He's working on what he calls a documentary, and we find out that this documentary is him going around and killing women and filming their final reactions as the blade is about to go into their neck. And he has that blade set up on his tripod. He basically lures them into his darkroom apartment, which is set up in his house that was inherited to him from his father. He actually rents out the rooms in this house, and he only stays up in his little apartment upstairs where he edits together these films where he gets the final reactions of all the women that he has killed, and he doesn't show anybody this. Rightfully so, because they are going to think that he's an absolute psychopath, which he is. And we learn throughout the film what has caused him to be this way. Early in the film, he brings this girl, Helen, upstairs.
Hello. I don't know how many times we passed each other on the stairs, but tonight I'm determined at least to say hello to you. So hello.
And he shows her the films that his father was shooting, which were basically psychiatrist experiments, and he was using his own son as a guinea pig. And this is actually the first time I actually noticed an influence on another film. And Peeping Tom is a huge influence on so many films, not just in the slasher genre, because if you guys saw the movie Poor Things from last year, Willem Dafoe's character was actually a guinea pig experiment from his father, who would do just these crazy experiments on him. He would take the stomach acid out of Willem Dafoe's character's stomach to see if he absolutely needed it, and it turns out that they did, but his father ruined him that way. And then Willem Dafoe was actually using Emma Stone as one of his experiments. So it's nature versus nurture. Mark's father was filming his son in certain situations, such as throwing a lizard on his bed, or when he was sitting next to his mother on her deathbed and filming his reactions. He was a psychiatrist, a renowned psychiatrist, but he was doing all of his experiments on his son, not realizing the pain and damage that he would cause in his adult life. And Mark, he could just see it in his character because Carl Bowen plays it so perfectly. He's a very strange dude, but you understand why. This is a very deep fetish for him. He really clearly gets off on killing these women, and he can't control it despite the fact that he wants to. He's like really dreaming about getting caught and finally being able to tell his story. Very similar to like the serial killer Ed Gein, because he's not going to confess himself, but he wants to deep down get caught. And it's all just done so well in this film. The story and plot still holds up to this very day, but the film itself, it's got some issues. It's not paced perfectly. Again, this is a very, very old film, so it makes a lot of sense why it wouldn't be paced perfectly. Some of the dialogue and acting isn't delivered in the best way possible, but in other sequences in this movie, it is delivered perfectly. There's a sequence about in the middle of this movie where we see the director of a film, which is really great. I always love seeing filmmaking in film. It's one of my favorite aspects of film, is always when you get to see that in a movie, and we're doing this in 1960. So the director's a bit of an asshole, and he wants one of his characters to react to this comedy sequence where they keep bringing in bigger and bigger trunks, different color trunks, and he wants a really comedic ending to this scene. But when we get to the third trunk, it turns out that there's a body in it, and then the director himself reacts in a comedic way. So the film that he's making didn't get that comedic ending that he wanted in that scene, but we ended the scene with this comedic ending. So actually it was kind of meta in that sense, while showing us that, yes, he wanted this comedic scene. He actually gave us the comedic scene, the viewer of this film. So I thought that was just fantastic writing, great screenplay writing there. And then this movie, besides being known for its subject matter, also has some great great cinematography. I absolutely love late 1940s, 1950s color films. This is 1960, but it still looks very much like a 1950s film. They did so much with color back then, and they look so unique. That's one thing when you talk about Michael Powell, who also directed The Red Shoes, which is funny because that film stars Maura Shearer, who pops up in this movie as well, playing kind of a similar character, but she doesn't have as big a role in this movie. But that's another thing. We're dealing with obsession, you know, your commitment to your art. That was a big theme in The Red Shoes. What are you willing to risk? What is Mark willing to risk for this? Yes, he gets off on the killing, but he also wants to be a filmmaker. He's editing together a documentary, which he calls a documentary. We know what it really is, though. But for him, you know, it's very, very, very important. I just absolutely love the cinematography in this film. It being this old, I just feel like lends itself so well to the 4K Blu-ray format. That's why I just can't, that's why I had to pick this one up, because this film, I've seen it before. I'm not totally in love with the movie. I'm just really more fascinated with the influence of this film on other films. You know, you could just see it in the bones, whether it be in movies like Manhunter. That film features a scene with a woman who is blind, and she's dealing with the serial killer in that movie. He's called the Tooth Fairy, but she doesn't realize she's with him. She just genuinely cares about him. And in this movie, Helen's mother is blind, and she is very aware of what Mark really is. She doesn't think he's a serial killer, but she thinks that he needs a lot of help, and she's kind of breaking it down to him, and he really needs to hear that. So we get this emotional scene, and you could just see the influence of that scene on the one scene in Manhunter. We just talked about Poor Things, but of course on the slasher genre. You know, these aren't violent films. Psycho and Peeping Tom. Psycho's obviously a little bit more gorier than this. This really has no gore at all. Actually, it just has none at all. We always cut away before we see anything, but this clearly has a huge influence on the slasher genre. Once we get to the 1970s with movies like Black Christmas and Halloween, and then we get the slasher boom of the 1980s, all of that can be credited to films like Peeping Tom and Psycho. And it's really funny that both those films were released in 1960 because Michael Powell and Alfred Hitchcock actually had a friendship, so they did support each other's work. Michael Powell actually helped Alfred Hitchcock early in his career, so they had a relationship as well. So these films weren't competing with each other. You know, this is a very famous British film, and it was really panned and just offended the British film critics at the time. Even though at this point it has developed a cult following, it has become a very, very important and influential film, but at the time this was received very badly to the point it pretty much ruined Michael Powell's career, who had a very successful directing career before this. But, you know, people weren't ready for that. That's just how the world always works. Once the old guard leaves, then you start to appreciate the new work, and that's why eventually we get directors like Martin Scorsese, who just absolutely loves this film, championed for it, and still does to this very day, because when we get to the 4K Blu-ray, we'll talk about interviews that he is involved with. So he absolutely loved this film. So him being young at the time, he fell in love with this movie, while the old guard just absolutely hated it, and it's understandably so. That's the differences in generations. But either way, we ended up with one of the best films of all time. Maybe it's not one of my favorite films ever made. I still enjoy it to a certain point, and I just really appreciate the cinematography and the influence that it had on other films. And you can definitely clarify this as one of the most important films ever made, and one that every cinephile should see, especially if you are a fan of slashers. But anyway, let's move on to the STUDIOCANAL 4K Blu-ray.
Whatever I photograph, I always lose.
Well, here's the STUDIOCANAL 4K Blu-ray release of Peeping Tom. So this is a Region B release, so if you live in the United States, you are not going to be able to play the Blu-ray in here unless you have a Region B Blu-ray player. And I actually don't have a Region B Blu-ray player, so I only was able to actually check out the 4K Blu-ray that's in here, which is okay because you actually get all of your extras on that 4K Blu-ray disc, but I'm not actually able to compare the Blu-ray that's packed in here with the 4K Blu-ray. So all of my thoughts are going to be just based on the 4K Blu-ray that's packed in here. So first you get this amazing packaging from STUDIOCANAL. I absolutely love this slipcover, and STUDIOCANAL for the most part usually gives us some great artwork. I actually prefer a lot of their John Carpenter artwork over the United States releases we got from Shout Factory, whether it be Escape from New York or They Live. I thought that the UK versions were much nicer than the US Shout Factory, Scream Factory releases we got, but you know, that's a minor complaint. The packaging isn't the biggest deal in the world, but the packaging on this really is fantastic. I really love it. Kind of keeping it simple, which I really appreciate, and I love the colors on it. You come inside, same artwork underneath. When you come in here, you know, you kind of get the bookmark casing here, so this flips over like this. It's a 2-disc set. You get one 4K Blu-ray, and you get a Blu-ray, a Region B Blu-ray. Just want to make that clear to you guys. You need a Region B player or a region-free Blu-ray player to play this second disc, but your 4K is going to be region-free. You also get some nice reading material in here. You know, not the biggest book in the world, but still good paper stock, a good amount of reading material. material, really nice. Love the extra mile that STUDIOCANAL went on this one. They even went out of their way and got some new extras for us while also giving us all the previously released extras, which is awesome. I always appreciate them going out of their way to give us new special features, new bonus features. We really don't get that too much with the new 4K Blu-ray releases. It really has to come from a boutique label who really cares about the film, and clearly STUDIOCANAL took this very, very seriously. They have a 56-minute interview slash like looking back on this film with a couple of film critics that I really enjoyed. You even get to see the restoration process, which, you know, you guys always hear me talking about source material here on the channel. If you want to know what film actually looks like and how they have to actually bring it to the forefront to actually get this on 4K Blu-ray, all the work it takes, and maybe understand why some 4Ks look better than other 4Ks, and especially when it comes to classic film, you get the breakdown in here. The one guy was actually talking about, he's like, well, you know, 1960s Kodak was actually really, really good, really easy to work with, whereas 1950s, when we had to take color and transfer that to 4K, you know, it just was very faded, and it just was very, very hard. So whenever, you know, we're reviewing a 4K, I try and look into this stuff and see if the source material is in rough shape, but they actually said that for the most part, Peeping Tom's source material was pretty good. It was actually kept in pretty good shape, so they were able to actually bring this to the 4K format beautifully, which leads right into the visuals of this one, which are basically a 10 out of 10. Just don't go into this expecting to get your socks knocked off, because this is a 1960 film in color. It's not going to compare to a 2023, 2024 film brought to 4K Blu-ray, shot with the best modern cameras, with the best modern lenses. No, it's not going to look like that. But if you loved this film before and you've seen it how it previously looked, and then you look at it now on this beautiful 4K Blu-ray where it has Dolby Vision and HDR10 on it, and I compared them both, they're very comparable. I didn't really see too much of a difference. If anything, the HDR10 Plus actually looked a little bit brighter, but that really is just minor complaints. I also checked them out on 2 different TVs and 2 different players. I didn't see too much of a difference in the Dolby Vision and the HDR10. Just, it looks good either way. Beautiful. I mean, like I said, I love how this film is shot, the great use of color. I just love the way this film is lit, and it just translates so well to the 4K Blu-ray format right away in the beginning. Just the way this movie looks, you're just going to be fully invested in it, and it really is just going to capture your eye. But again, it's a 1960 film, so you know what that looks like, and you just know that it's not going to look like the greatest transfer you've ever seen, but they really did a great job just with the source material and bringing this to 4K Blu-ray, and this is the best by far this film has ever looked. And the audio, you get 4 audio tracks on here. 2 of them are German, one's French, and one is in English. They are both LCPM's 2.0 tracks, and they all sounded pretty clear. Obviously, I don't speak the other 2 languages, but I do speak English, and that came in crisp and clear, no pops, everything you would expect from a film that was recorded back then. You would think that there would be a lot more audio issues. There are absolutely 0 audio issues. It's just an audio track that's not going to knock your socks off like the visuals, you know. This is an older film, so you're really going to be there with the 2.0, and you just want to make sure everything comes in crisp and clear, and you can hear every little bit of it. The score to this movie is fantastic. I really enjoy it. You know, at the time, it's kind of mixed a little bit loud, but that's just always how the film has been, so it works perfectly. They did not change anything like that. They just really made this come in crisp and clear, where to the point where you don't have to adjust your volume at all, and you're really just going to appreciate the film and not have to worry about the audio or the visuals. They both looks and sounds perfect, the best that Peeping Tom has ever looked and sounded. So I really have no complaints when it comes to the visuals, the audio, or the extras. The packaging is great. So this is a fantastic release from STUDIOCANAL. I really think they did an awesome job on this transfer, and you could just see the love and care that was actually put into it when you check out those amazing extras, and just see how important this film was to so many different people, including Martin Scorsese. You get an intro from him in the extras as well, a previously recorded one. It wasn't recorded for this one, but still, you get an interview with him and a bunch of other ones looking back on this film as well. So it really is just an awesome release from STUDIOCANAL. I imagine eventually this scam will end up in the United States from a different boutique label, maybe the Criterion Collection. This definitely does seem like the kind of film that ends up in the Criterion Collection. Well, I knew it was coming, but I didn't realize how soon. It turns out Peeping Tom is going to be coming to 4K Blu-ray courtesy of the Criterion Collection here in the United States. It should be the same exact scan as the STUDIOCANAL 4K Blu-ray that we're actually talking about right now, but after I was editing the video, what do you know, Criterion announces their May releases, and on May 14th, 2024, if you live in the United States, you're going to be able to get Peeping Tom on 4K Blu-ray, and like I was just saying, it should be the same exact scan, so don't feel too bad if you had this imported like myself. The only differences is going to be in some of the extras, but it looks like one of my favorite extras from this 4K Blu-ray, which is showing how they restored Peeping Tom and brought it to this beautiful looking 4K. That is going to be on the Criterion release as well, and we'll talk more about Criterion's May releases on Sundays. Let's talk physical media. But anyway, back to the review. It's Peeping Tom, just like Psycho, one of the most influential films of all time. Obviously, I'd still kind of give the edge to Psycho. I think Psycho's one that I can run back to more often than I can run back to Peeping Tom. Peeping Tom, I don't love as much, but I just really appreciate the filmmaking that went into this movie. And, you know, the risk that Michael Powell took to make this film in 1960, a very ahead of its time film. It's one I could definitely recommend, and I could recommend this 4K Blu-ray as well. And if I was going to give this 4K Blu-ray a score out of 1 to 10, I would give this one a very solid 9.5 out of 10. I could highly recommend this, and I actually got this one imported to me from the Atomic Movie Store. They got this to me quick and fast with amazing packaging. They're not a sponsor of this show, but I was just very impressed with what they did, and they also have shop pay, so you can pay for it in 4 installments, which really does help the collector save some money, so I can recommend you guys check them out as well. Hey everyone, before we get out of here today, it is Friday, and that means it's time for our digital code giveaway. In every single video we do here on Friday, we ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you have to do is answer one of those in the comment section below, and as long as you do that, you come back to Monday's video, we put your name on a magic wheel, we spin that bad boy 2 times, and the 2 names it lands on, they have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. And I figured we're talking Peeping Tom. That's an international British release, and I live here in the United States, so I wanted to ask you guys, what is your favorite international film that's ever been released? I want to know in the comment section below. And then I figured for the second digital code giveaway questions, I've asked this before, but we've gotten a lot of new people entering the giveaway each and every single week, so I want to know, what is your favorite classic film? I label a classic film anything released before 1970. In the 1970s, you know, films really started to get more darker, more grittier. You know, the code had been lifted, so we can really tell these great character studies. And before that, you know, everything kind of had to follow a certain set of rules, but still, there were some great films that came out that ever. I mean, I love classic film, and I want to know from you guys, what is your favorite classic film? All you gotta do is answer one of those questions in the comment section below. Just don't forget to come back to Monday's video to see if you are one of our lucky winners. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, share this video, and if you'd like to take your support of Let's Talk to the next level, maybe consider becoming a channel member. We have a Friends of the Tier channel, we have a Producers Tier where you can find John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, and Mr. Smelly Potato. We also have a Directors Tier, that's where you're going to find Frank's Media and Reviews, who also has a great YouTube channel as well, so make sure you guys check him out. But if you got no money to throw our way, don't you guys worry about it. We just appreciate you checking out this video. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, maybe get out in those streets and tell your friends about us. But after you're done doing all that, we'll be seeing you around.